Welcome to Tales from the Old World, a Warhammer Fantasy podcast, sponsored by War of the Ever-Chosen, a 6th edition fantasy event with some of the most fun and unique scenarios in the hobby. Go to talesfromtheoldworld.com to get your tickets today to claim the title of Ever-Chosen.
Hi guys, welcome to Tales from the Old World, covering everything Warhammer Fantasy. My name's Dave. I am an impressively average 6th edition player, and not to show off, but I occasionally dabble very averagely in 4th and 5th too. But I'm going to be talking with some people who are actually experts in specific armies and tactics to help give you guys lots of advice on how to play with certain armies and how to beat them too, along with some fun bits about the lore from the old world too. If you have any suggestions about armies or races you want more advice on, please go to Tales from the Old World Facebook or Instagram page and leave a comment there, and we'll add it to the to-do list. But before we get started, if you're interested in attending an amazing 6th edition fantasy event where players are travelling from all over the world to compete for the title of Ever-Chosen, there's an event coming up called War of the Ever-Chosen, which is fun and unique scenarios ranging from epic to weird. So go to talesfromtheoldworld.com and click on event for details. It's based around fun and banter rather than win at all cost nonsense, and it should be a good laugh, and I hope to see you there. But speaking of guys who like to annoyingly beat me at all costs, in this episode we're talking to Max Cooper from Bearfoot Miniatures. You might know his YouTube channel. If you don't, it's a really great one. You should check it out. He's a veteran 6th edition player, general good guy, even though he batters me every chance he gets. And he's going to be discussing how to play with and how to beat Tzeentch Chaos armies. We're going to go over why Max chose Tzeentch as his army at the beginning, the strengths of Tzeentch armies, effective tactics for fighting against Tzeentch and how to beat them, how to use Tzeentch magic and how the flip side of how to actually deal with it when you're playing with them, you know, what number of power dice to expect, and some good advice on actually how to use up an opponent's dice, the most potent magic items that the army can use and what to avoid at all costs. We go over controversial opinions on Dispel scrolls, how using fleeing units can sometimes earn victory. We'll talk about a couple of interesting Tzeentch novels and stories that you should check out, as well as some favourite areas of the lore, and just some general northernness from the Lancashire lads. So anyway, here's the episode. It's done over Zoom, so no comments about the sound, you big arseholes. Enjoy! Okay, right, so we're here with Max. How you doing, Max? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Not so bad, not so bad.
Well, what podcast are we on, Dave? What podcast are we on?
What number is it?
No, yeah.
Well, it depends how terrible you are. So if you're good, you get higher up. If you're terrible, you kind of get lower down the pack. We're talking with yourself today because you're a big Tzeentch player. Is it Tzeentch? How do you pronounce? Do you pronounce the T? That's always
Tzeentch, because I'm not an absolute lunatic.
Exactly.
So, I'm not a psychopath, so I prefer to pronounce the T as silent because obviously that's the natural way to pronounce a T.
Yeah.
Unless you're from Lancashire, which I am, in which case, when we're other than you put T.
Just Tzeentch, working down mill with Tzeentch. So how long? So tell us a little bit about your background anyway, in terms of like how long you've been playing the hobby. Did you get back into it?
I'm glad you qualified it as hobby background, because otherwise we were going to start with a long life story. So
yeah. Tell us about your addictions and all your personal problems.
Nothing quite like scratching an addiction. But I started playing fantasy because basically when I was 11, I used to play 40k. And saw all the cool kids played fantasy in the local Games Workshop store. Used to see it, and they're all still playing actually 9th age Element Games. I see them about every now and then. But I used to see them and thought, oh my God, I'd never have the skill to play fantasy. And I still don't, but I attempt to. So yeah, I eventually got into fantasy with an ogre after a few bounces off like Skaven, which was the most ridiculous thing to try and start with because of the amount of models. I then ended up playing ogres when they first came out.
Was that 6? So did you start with 6?
Yeah, I started with 6. So when the ogres first came out in 6, they started with a fairly terrible ogre army which involved 2 hunters because I just liked the model, and then played a Khorne Chaos Warriors army with just mono god because it's the only way to play. Anyone that says different is a lunatic as well.
Yeah. We have talked about before about how people are perverts if they have multiple
it's just sick in the
gods.
head. They need to be institutionalized. So yeah, I then played a Khorne Warriors army before discovering alcohol and women, or delving deeper into alcohol and women. Mainly the alcohol wasn't too successful with the women. And yeah, coming back into the hobby, I started with 30k, and me and a lad from 30k called Chris Vect, the Italian stallion himself, started playing fantasy again. It was like a year or 2 before COVID. He had some dwarves. I wanted to play Kislev, but I knew Nicholas Merck from the Old World Lives podcast. Big shout out to Nicholas, fuck you. He had a Kislev army already, and I wanted something to go. I wanted Kislev, but so I thought I'd just do the opposite to that after reading Riders of the Dead.
Great book.
So I chose the Kurgan Tzeentch army, basically, that I have currently, based on that. And that sort of spawned me into like going about multiple armies. It wasn't my first choice. Kislev would have been my first choice, but because Chaos wasn't my first choice, I then played a few different ones before deciding, actually, I really, really like Chaos. I like playing the bad guys. And I now haven't got anything else painted because the only thing I can ever add to is my Tzeentch Chaos Warriors army. I've just got no desire to ever paint anything else.
Not at all.
Nothing at all. It's like I'm very singularly focused on armies in different systems. So when I collect a single army, it's either that army or auxiliary units to that army. So my Tzeentch Chaos army has bits of Dogs of War in the form of like light cav bowmen, or I'm working on some medium cav from Dogs of War, and they will add just flavor to my Tzeentch army because everything else in the world is rubbish, and Beiji will reign supreme.
All right, so yeah, because it looks like a very bad guy Kislev army with a lot of we'll get into your list and everything in a minute, but so yeah, what's that? Stillmania, was it? The Nigel Stillman thing, didn't he have you heard of that? Which is, I'm sure it's called Stillman.
Go on, tell me about that.
Well, he had something which was kind of like he sees everybody. Do you remember Nigel Stillman?
Yeah,
it's like only one. No. You have one army.
Yeah. I remember the White Dwarf article.
You kind of gloss that. You learn that. You get expert at them. You play every army, and you never goddamn change. Which I'm never really, because I'll have a different army every couple of weeks. So it's just but I do agree with it if you want to become a good player. But I think a lot of the funds, I don't know, because I got back into the hobby for painting and then just started painting so much shite. I was like, I should really fucking do something with these and then play with them. But then it becomes I'm very average at lots of different races rather than I'm really good at one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, one thing I think is you do learn the core game mechanics more and more, and especially if you have multiple armies, you at least have the opportunity to see how, say, I'm very inexperienced with block regiments of troops, or even not that experienced with heavy cavalry. So my army is focused around light cavalry with some really hard-hitting characters mainly. Like there is that one unit of Chaos Knights, granted.
I was going to say, piss off. The only thing I've played you before, it's these chosen knights are like, oh, they're so gentle. And
well, everyone gets hung up on them. I have won a game or two without them. But I use them badly. This is my point. Even my Chaos Knights, I use them badly. I'm not aggressive enough with them.
Right.
And it's because I don't have this diversity of units. I'm very stuck in with how I've set up my army. So just very quickly, my army is being Kurgans, and I've themed them on Mongols in the real world. That's why my leader is Beiji, which is because he got beheaded by Phil Gore the Foul. And he was called Jebe originally, or Jeb, which is the arrow from Mongolian history, if anyone knows any Mongolian history, who is a sub-commander of Genghis Khan. So then I had to invert it to Beiji. So following with that theme, all of my units are Marauder Horsemen cavalry, and they're pretty useless other than having a character in there. But I know how I've learned how to play that fast cav army. Whereas the heavy cav that are in there, I'm not aggressive enough with, and I'm terrible with, essentially.
Well, just so if anybody's never really played Tzeentch before, or do you want to give us like what's a typical, if I was going to a tournament or something or an event, what would be the typical Tzeentch army that you'd see? And then we'll get into the differences with yourself, would you say?
Right, so what I would say, there's a couple of builds for Tzeentch. If we're going like what people remember from like the days of yore, it's a Tzeentch army based on chariots with lots of magic. And that's because in Tzeentch, regiments, chariots, all that sort of stuff gives you +1 casting dice in your own magic phase, not in your enemy's phase, but +1 like power dice in your phase. You also get the characters, which heroes become like exalted aspiring champions become level 2 wizards, and your lord choice becomes a level 4 wizard, and they can only select from the lore of Tzeentch. You can't then, if you have your top lord as a Tzeentch mark, you can't then have anyone with a different mark, which means you can't have sorcerers with the mark of undivided. So you were stuck with that lord of Tzeentch into having the lore of Tzeentch. So what you would a lot of times see in like quote Tzeentch armies is actually a lord or sorcerer with the mark of undivided, heroes with the mark of undivided, which would then allow you to take any mark in your army. And then you would fill your core choices with chariots of Tzeentch, because that's the cheapest way to get +1 power dice. And the reason you do that is because the lore of Tzeentch is not that great.
You mean the actual spells themselves?
Yeah, so it's
just blue fire and green fire, and I can never remember which one's which. Like,
well, that's why you get the classic name of Stop Hitting Yourself. You get Make Horrors, which is the indigo fire, I believe. But it's all really based around magic missiles. I think is actually the best bit of that lore, or at least for how my army plays, because you're shooting out quite long range. It makes up for a Chaos Army's lack of shooting, but it's random strength, which a lot of the time bites me in the arse. Phil, who I play most, actually gives people the advice never dispel the random strength spells, because I will always roll a 1 or 2. Now, if you come up against the Tzeentch chariot army that's playing with undivided sorcerers, they don't have that downside. They can pick some really nasty laws like death, or they can pick death, fire, shadows, or beasts, I believe. In which you can then give unseen lurker to your unit, so get flank charges quite nicely in the magic phase. You can even fireball is statistically better than the random strength of Tzeentch fire, because you've got strength 4 guaranteed rather than D6, which will come out to 3.5 average. Which I know it's a small difference, but it's painful when you roll a 1 or a 2. And it just gives you that, it gives you the ability to abuse all of those magic dice that you get if you run with undivided sorcerers. And that is what people remember from the old days when they say a Tzeentch list. The alternate build to that, in like tournament wise, is Lord of Tzeentch on Dragon. And you're not actually going with that Lord of Tzeentch because he's got the lore of Tzeentch. He's got a really nice spell which you can re-roll everything. But
that's the one we've played. Is that one which has knackered me more than anything? It's just the fact that he's missed. Oh shit!
No, he's hit with everything. No, it's really good. It's really good. But why you were taking the Lord of Tzeentch in this particular list is you then have a dragon, and you give him the Eye of Tzeentch, which gives a 3-up ward save to the Lord and his mount against missile weapons, and a Lord with a great weapon, a Lord of Chaos, pretty good in combat. Sort of okay, I think.
So that counts artillery and stuff as well?
Yes, literally everything 3-up ward save. So that's after your armor save, 3-up ward save, and if you've got the re-roll everything thing, your Lord himself can re-roll that 3-up ward.
Oh, wow.
So that is all like an infuriating, and you can also stack that. There's enough points left in your magic allowance to have the Staff of Change, so you can re-roll all of your spells, casting attempts, and dispel attempts. So you then just fill the rest of the list with whatever you want, and watch your opponent cry. And those are like the tournament builds for Tzeentch, which were horrible. One I wouldn't say was a proper Tzeentch army because it had undivided sorcerers in.
Yeah.
But there's the Tzeentch army, the Lord and Dragon, we all know shouldn't have been in there, right? It was just too good. Like, should have never happened.
So what's the typical amount of dice that those guys have got? And in terms of power dice and dispel, would you say?
So
on average.
In a Tzeentch army, which, because if you max out your heroes and your Lord, and they're the real center points of your army for any chaos army, because you want to be killing people in combat, you're going to start with about 12 power dice, and that's before you start adding in any regiments.
Yeah.
So, and that sounds terrifying, which it can be if you roll well on those random strength spells. If you roll some, and I don't want to underplay this, that you can get that re-roll everything spell that's really good. 5 ward on a big block of warriors is really good, but it's not as good as some of the other laws. And I think they've done that intentionally when they wrote the game, knowing that people would be doing these monogod armies and maxing out the hero choices. So I think they tempered it to that. I mean, the lore of Tzeentch is nowhere near as good as the lore of Nurgle, which is just hands down one of the best lores in the game.
I say in terms of damage, isn't it? It's like you don't get any strength 5 magic missiles or any of that nonsense. Or
no, well, I did against you when I played your Furies.
Yeah, but that's when you're fucking. That's because you're rolling 6/5s for every fucking chance you get. I don't know what's this bullshit which you're talking about. You rolling ones against Phil's because
you can watch the battle reports, mate. It's only you that I roll well against.
Oh, it doesn't happen. I've got a really good still of one of our games from your channel, which was kind of like what I rolled, and I'm sure I rolled 10 dice and about 8 of them were ones, which I think is
potentially
physically impossible. So I think there's some kind of magnets in your little studio somehow, and you're knackering me somehow. And that's what I'm going to stick to. But,
purposefully.
Yeah. So, but but that's kind of the fun of it. But I think you're right with the kind of if they were making those spells just destructive explosions, you'd have no chance. Where if at least you're giving them a chance, which is.
Well, I think it's actually a good thing. I wouldn't want lore to be any better than it is, because I've been quite successful with my Tzeentch army as it is. As successful as I want to be happy in the game.
Yeah.
Like I've got like a whatever percentage win record that's, I'm not losing every game. I'm not complaining about the lore like that. It's in the correct place, I would say, for how the army is set up to be designed around casting and spellcasters. Now, with that, there is obviously ways to abuse it, as I said before. Like, you can just set it up with undivided sorcerers, and then it sort of falls apart because I don't think it was designed to be done like that.
Okay. So what's the main difference to those type of armies that you kind of the silly ones with your own one when you say, because it's a lot of fast carve, isn't there? You have a lot of dogs and a lot of marauders on horses and
So what I would say you would normally see in a normal chaos army is like some blocks of warriors, which are very good. I've got one, but it's not like my favorite. That was my expansion bit of the army. With my army being Mongol themed, it's usually 4 units of marauder horsemen with a couple of units of dogs just as chaff, some screamers, everything that's fast, nothing on foot, everything's mounted. That then, because I'm not just going loads of units of Chaos Knights, I've got no marks really in my army. If I take a unit of Chaos Knights, that's 1 marked unit, which gives me 13 power dice. Compared to a normal army where you usually have 2 or 3 or 4 marked units, I've got no chariots because I don't like them. They're from the wrong era of history to be right in my head.
Right.
So I'm like not spamming chariots. It's 4 units of fast cav. As I said, screamers, a spawn with my Sentai horse, as well as Yeah.
You got that's I hate that model. This is gross to look at. It's like a weird horse it's like a centipede horse, isn't it? Which is just gross. It's like nightmare fuel. Where did you get that from? Was that a 3D print?
Yeah, that's a 3D print that I got on the internet.
Yeah, well, if you go on one of the fantasy battles on your channel, you put that in every army you have, don't you?
Most of them
on your channel. So it's weird. It's kind of like sheep coloured as well, which kind of makes it look like a centipede sheep as well. Which makes
that started
creepy.
off as the base coat, Dave, and everyone found it a bit disgusting because it's like a sort of maggoty, bone colour. And so I decided to just leave it at the base colour because it looked so disgusting with how it was.
So laziness pays off again. That's what we're always aiming for.
Yeah, exactly that.
So what are the main cons of them? So you say because you kind of
Tzeentch or of my army in particular.
Bit of both. So I'm kind of like for typically and yours in particular.
So with the general Tzeentch army, what you'll find compared to other Chaos armies is that you are very prone to breaking leadership based wise. So compared to the other powers, you've got Nurgle, which causes fear, so is immune to fear. You've got Khorne, which is immune to psychology by being frenzied. You've got Slaanesh, which is immune to psychology because of being Slaanesh.
Yeah.
And you've got Undivided, which is re-rolling morale and break tests. Anything leadership, all psychology and stuff like that. If I've got that wrong, shout at Dave online, not me.
I think if you invited this Pelican who doesn't know. No, but I think
so. It's the character, unit, or chariot may reroll failed psychology tests. So you can every single unit with that might fail a test can reroll it.
Is it every single one? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's the character, unit, or chariot.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So what would
so if you shoot them, cause 25% casualties, you are much more likely to run away than any other Chaos army. And actually, the amount that happens is quite high. Jebe got famous for being the yellow-bellied.
Jebe the yellow-bellied.
Yeah, that's why when he's having a good day, he's beigey, and he's split personality from being bashed over the head. Causes him to have good days and bad days. And that's when there's Jebe days and beigey days. So leadership, a real weakness of Tzeentch, I would say causing those, just forcing your opponent to take those 25% tests. If you can cause panic to happen at one side of the army, you've usually, as Chaos, got average leadership. Like leadership 8 is standard. It's no elves or dwarf level leadership. And it can really hurt when you start failing a number of them and your entire battle line runs because one unit of dogs has run away somewhere.
Oh, yeah. What's the leadership on a Marauder? Is it 7?
7 on a Marauder, 8 for a Chaos Warrior.
Yeah.
Warriors are pretty...
So that's doable, isn't it? If you
all the time.
Especially if you get the dogs go. Because dogs, what, leadership 5?
Leadership 5, and all you have to do is wipe out... They don't have the cavalry save, so it's just a toughness 3 with no minuses to the penalty to hit, or no penalty to hit, I should say. And if you just wipe out those 5 models, everything within whatever range it is that causes a break test, it's everything then has to take break test, which can really spiral out of control compared to other Chaos armies, which have some stuff to mitigate that.
Yeah.
Now,
well, it's kind of a stretch because when we've had games, because your army's so fast moving, and even though some of it is chaff with dogs coming at you and then a marauders right after them, it is a bit, what's the word? Do you know when you should be concentrating on the knights and the characters and things like that? But there is this, they stop you moving. So if you're kind of like a one who's used to moving about, that as soon as they move forward, it kind of makes all your tactics go straight out the window. Because you've got to deal with them, and then before the knights get to you, So
this is actually one big thing. The weakness of my army, in particular, being a fast cav army, I've got some shooting, so to pick off stuff. I've got a punchy unit when I do use the Chaos Knight.
Not a lot of shooting, though, is there? Is it just
shooting is in magic missile style.
Oh, right. I was going to say.
It's just comparable to other armies shooting.
Yeah.
I would say.
So I'm saying you have used. I'm sure you moaned once when we had a game about
Dogs of War light card was my only
he had some.
throwing axes.
Some throwing axes, and you're like, what a fucking wasted fucking.
24 points on a unit of 6, just completely down the toilet.
Yeah.
For every so with my army having 4 units of Marauder Horse, equipping them all with throwing axes, I could just have another unit of Marauder Horse.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Just another unit of Marauder Horse, thanks. Yeah. So the weakness of my army is people staying in formation, and it's actually something I really like about how it forces people to play against my fast cav army. Is if there's no weak link to surround or break, if someone stays in formation, it's really hard to move. So I'm forced to use my magic missiles to weaken a unit to find that chink in an enemy's battle line in order to sort of pounce on it. And the benefit of the army is that when that happens, when there is that chink in the battle line, I've got the speed to be able to pounce on it before they can react. And it sort of has this very, very, at least what I imagine as real worldy aspect to what would be a very fast marauder army on horseback.
So if you were going up against your army, what would be your main? I suppose it'd be. No, actually, before we do that, how does your particular list differ with who you're playing against? Do you tend to always use the same tactics, or you're like, I'm going to do this against dwarfs, I'm going to do this against...
As in my list never differs.
Yeah.
Because I don't...
One more tactics.
I don't like... Yeah, right. So the tactics-wise, it's so hard. Deployment phase tends to be very standardized with regardless of army that I'm playing. The downside of the army is it's really long. I've got no ranks at all. No ranks. So it covers the board because it's all a file.
Yeah.
And it's deployment's very easy because I can very easily reposition with my fast cav army. The only thing that really matters to go down is the Chaos Knights when I've got them. Even Centaur, when I use them, are more forgiving because they can get round woods and stuff if I've deployed them in the wrong place. It tends to come down to, does someone face me with a line in the center of the table or go for a refused flank? If they've gone for a refused flank, it does tend to be harder because they've secured one of their flanks with... Is this just all to get tactics to use against me, Dave?
Yeah, I'm not even recording, to be honest.
So it's a refused flank with some solid shooting, even magical defense. If someone's taking a few casters, it's usually enough to shut down the right spells that really causes me problems. Refused flanks cause problems because there's less weak links in that line to be able to exploit. However, what it does allow me to do is completely move about the board at will if someone's gone for the refused flank. It's quite hard to describe what my particular army does or how I would respond because it's so... I'd say more so than a lot of armies, I don't enter the game with a game plan. I have to wait until somebody makes a mistake and then pounce on it. So I sort of... The entire game plan, regardless of what I'm actually doing, tends to be be really aggressive so that if someone responds, I can pull back with whatever unit I want to pull back with and then hit in the flanks. But I'm very aggressive, but then I sort of wait at 16 inches away so they know I'm still in charge range, but you're not. And then I just wait for a mistake to happen because when someone doesn't make a mistake, I lose. When someone makes a mistake, I can usually capitalize on it because of the speed of the army. And that is the game plan, I suppose. Is waiting for that mistake to happen.
If there's a unit, excitable.
Well, that's it. He's trying to bait someone, and later in the game, if it's getting to turn, say 3 or 4, if someone's not done anything, I might move even the Chaos Knights forward into a bad position to see if someone will just charge them. Because I don't mind running away with my Chaos Knights. It might sound cowardly.
Really?
It's no matter what. Those Chaos Knights running away might open the chink to the rest of my army being able to flank charge or...
Yeah, I suppose.
Because even with my Chaos Lord, will go in a unit of Marauder Horsemen, I'd say more than 9 times out of 10. But that unit still because Chaos Knights deal with what they want to deal with. Unless they're in a bad position, they deal with most things. And this is what I'm saying. Maybe I'm waiting too late into the game to use those knights a lot of the time. But the Chaos Knights don't usually need help against something. So my Lord goes in a different unit.
They're always chosen as well, right? Your knights are always chosen, or
no, not always, but it's I would normally say there's only one variety of Chaos Knights, and that's chosen.
Yeah.
But it's just such a good upgrade for that knight unit. It's
especially because most people will play like 5 knights. Don't you have like 7 or 8 or something?
I use 7 with a character usually, and that's because people usually want to die, and then 7 gives me, when someone else has a real strong unit of knights, that gives me 1 either side of their unit of knights to strike in.
Right.
So that's why there's the 7 and then 1 to die, because inevitably 1 will die in some way. So it's that assurance of number of attacks, and it's just power play on, because that's one thing that's a real weakness for me is if someone has knights and can be very aggressive with them, that causes me a lot of problems, because that's another unit that's really fast.
Right. Yeah.
That can really upset what my army's trying to do, which is be faster than everyone else all the time. Be going this way and that way and all the time, everywhere, dizzying, twirling to victory.
Okay. Do you have? Do you find you come? Is there a certain race that you come up against that usually gives you trouble, or is it always the player? Do you think that, oh, fucking hell, I'm playing, I don't know, so high elves, do you think there's going to be a problem, or is it always the player?
Phil's Beastmen massively caused me problems. So that's Nurgle armies and armies that cause fear.
Is that because he's played you a million times, though?
It's because they cause fear.
Right.
So I have to take a lot of fear checks in which inevitably some units will fail. And when my army stops doing what I want it to do, this sounds ridiculous because that's true for everyone's army. But in relying on pouncing on a mistake rather than dictating what's going to happen, if some of my army starts misbehaving, that stops their moments of opportunity from happening. So I don't have the control to be able to pounce when it's necessary. So fear-causing armies really give me problems. Vampire counts as well.
I was just about to say,
because
vampire
they
counts
combine fear with, you can't just like, I don't have rank bonuses. I have 1 standard in the army, which is in the knights, that usually don't need it, but because it's 1 unit, it's 1 combat res. But other than that, it's not combat res heavy.
So I was going to say, they're probably, vampire counts are probably the only race, maybe against high elves, but they're the only race which should be coming up to a similar amount of dice as you as well in the magic phase. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not quite as many, but if one race is going to have a bunch,
more if they've lent into it.
Yeah,
high elves will have more dice than me in particular, because I've not got lots of regiments of Tzeentch. If you played a chariot army and had the famous like 22, 24 magic dice, no chance.
Jesus,
but,
really?
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done. Like chariots cost 110 points each, I believe, plus 20 for the mark.
I'd be upset. I must be. I usually like people to bring the list they like. But if I said it was just have an event, I'm like, here we go with my like 6 Dispel dice or something like that. That would be
like a sorcerer on chariot, because the whole army's on chariots.
Yeah.
Unless you have him on a steed, I suppose. That can be like 250 points plus 3 more sorcerers in the heroes is like 500 points. So that's 800, and then you've got 1,200 points to spend on Tzeentch chariots, which gives you like another, say, just call it 8 to be conservative.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever actually come up against anybody with that? Is that on the grapevine type thing? You've heard of it happening?
That's on the grapevine, based on like tournament armies from when Sixth was still alive.
Yeah.
Or hadn't been resurrected.
Yeah.
So that was like grapevine armies from the Warhammer GTs.
Oh, that's gross.
Horrendous.
That's like, do you ever have those games where you just know where you've lost in round one and you're just like, oh, just fucking get us out of the way. But trying to make sure I'm not grumbling the whole time, but it's just like, but 26 dice should be. You've got some personal issues if you come into a game with 26. I've got to win. my mum will be proud of me. I'll tell that fucking teacher at school who thought I was a shitbag. Look at me with my 26 dice.
I think one of the maxims that I heard a few years ago now, and I think it's the most excellent sort of saying to live your life or gaming life by is no one gets the dick sucked for winning.
Not in Warhammer. I've tried, but no, that's true.
No, they don't seem to care. Like the other halves.
yeah.
Like male, female, other halves.
My wife won't even talk to me after I've played Warhammer because she doesn't understand. Never mind try to convince her of anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. It's one to live your life by.
Yeah.
It's just try and make your opponent have a good time. With Tzeentch, it's very easy to abuse. But if we're talking a good friendly list, using the lore of Tzeentch by having Tzeentch characters, everyone, when you get into a game and you count out your power dice, will call you a massive bastard. But then they'll have a few magic phases, and if you've not rolled incredible, like if you've rolled average, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm used to this. I know what the spells do." Like it's a fairly well-written list in like the actual army book wise.
I suppose if you just went at them and just went at all their characters with everything you've got that can do some punching. You might be all right, but I think that's strange. I don't know why you'd do that. I'd be very upset basically if I fucking came up against that. That I wouldn't know what to do. Just coming up against your
stunned you.
Coming up against your 13 and 14 makes me furious.
Well, next time we play, I'll try and get the 20 magic dice out and see how you feel.
I'm gonna come with 18 Dispel scrolls, just with like one unit. And just shitloads of Dispel scrolls. That'd be me.
Oh, Dispel scrolls are the worst. Anyone, right? This is what it really comes down to. Let's talk business now. Dispel scrolls are for the unimaginative.
Right. It was because obviously we got War of the Everchosen and people are coming up in Feb, and people were talking about, and I was pondering the concept of there was no Dispel scrolls allowed, but you can't do that. But having a rule of just one, like your army has one. What do you think that's fair? But this isn't confirmed. It was something I'm not good.
You consider it?
I doubt I'm going to do it. It's just I think would that be interesting? I've come across 50% people going, no, I need my 2 or 3 Dispel scrolls. Otherwise,
what I think
my arm's
you should
useless.
do is in that vein.
But saying that, the people are like, yeah, do 1 Dispel scroll are usually Tzeentch Vampire Counts High Elves players.
Maybe
have a shitload of dice. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe have a scale of if the more power dice or Dispel dice you have, which you'll gain off having casters, the more Dispel dice you have, the less Dispel scrolls you can have.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to do it.
Because it would be a way of mitigating that. If you've gone really magic heavy, you're going to open yourself up for having less Dispel scrolls. And I think that would incentivize people to not just spam Dispels. Like the token 2 level 1s with loaded, like the scroll caddies, you couldn't do it because you couldn't just have cheap Dispel scroll caddies. You've either got to do, I think that may be a way to do it, but I think completely banning them.
You usually don't come up against more than 2, maybe 3. But if you come up against people with like shitloads, what's the most amount of Dispel scrolls you've come up against in one game?
Phil's had 6 before.
Of course, it's Phil. Yeah, but he knows you, and he's played against.
Yeah, so this is
would he do that against anybody but you, though? I don't think he would. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'd like to think he wasn't tailoring, but
of course he is.
No, he's going to call me a liar now after saying 6.
I think I'm doing a podcast with Phil, actually, so he probably will. I'll get his feedback.
Don't listen to that one. Everyone out there, don't listen to Phil's podcast. He's rubbish. So yeah, I'd say 4 is actually quite common. 3 maybe quite common because that's people a lot of the time take 2 wizards, and you can usually get, so that's 100 allowance of magic items, and that can get you enough Dispel Scrolls to ruin someone's day if they focused magic.
Yeah, that's a bit rubbish, because it's not fun. At the end of the day, the game's supposed to be fun as well. So if it's kind of like, because especially where it's kind of usually where their dice has been doing you. Do you know, when you get a lot of stuff off and they literally just rolling well to dispel, and then when you actually get one, it's like, oh no, here we go, Dispel Scroll. That's when it's upsetting. But I don't think I would do that rule, to be honest, of limit anybody. It was just something that was mentioned and discussed.
I think the actual problem with it comes in that you make the decision to use it after the power, or even use your Dispel dice after the power dice have been rolled. So you need a lot more power dice to be able to get them through, because you choose your power dice, go, I've got this, and then someone goes, you've not rolled well there, I'm just going to use this amount of Dispel dice. And it's a core mechanic to the game. I wouldn't change that bit, but I think that's where the problem with Dispel Scrolls come in. It's not, I'm going to use this Dispel Scroll, and the power dice are retained, but the spell's gone. It's a hard shutdown of what can be a costly investment of dice for 25 points.
Are you the type of guy who, there's usually two type of players.
Where is this question going, Dave?
Are you the type of guy who enjoys walks on the beach? No, if do you know, usually people, you're either 2 players. You're either the guy who is doing the weaker spells first with his power dice to then get rid of his dice to then bring out the big guns, or you the opposite, where some people go big straight away to get rid of the dispel, get rid of the scrolls.
So
I mean? I see this different people in different ways. You see, when they'll go big straight away just to make them burn through some scrolls, or do you get rid of their dice first?
This comes down to possibly the best aspect of wargaming, which is psychological manipulation, which is terrorizing your opponent with psychology in real life, not just the actual game mechanic. So I think you've got to read your opponent on it. Is your opponent going to be able to be baited out of dice? And I think turn 1, that you've got to sort of try and see what your opponent's going to do with their dice. Are they going to respond to maybe do a turn 1 weak spell first on a key unit, so it's not a complete throwaway spell, but are they going to be baited out early, and then you've got a bigger spell coming up that they know about? Do they respond to that first spell? And I think it sets the tone for the game of what you're then going to be doing, because some opponents say, like, or sometimes I use my Blasted Standard, which gives my knights a 5-up ward. I can tell by that, because it's very easy to dispel, and a 5-up ward's really good on my knights. However, it's not the key to my strategy, but they really want to dispel it. So whether or not they're going to dispel that sort of sets the tone for how they're going to respond to magic phases. And I think this is across all armies. It's worthwhile having that consideration in the first turn, because you've got 5 more turns to destroy them.
Yeah.
First turn needs to be psychological warfare from the go. And
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm more like, so you're not going to charge your whip? What? I'm very reactive. I can react with that. Oh, you're not going to use that? Oh, you're not going to charge that? I remember we went to, what was it? One of Dark Omens the other week, and I elected to like flee with 1 unit, to like drag them into a square of where my entire army would be and just shoot them. But the fact that everybody went, oh, boo, I was like, what? I could do stuff. Of course my Dark Elves could fight. And then, of course, they...
What, so then you didn't flee?
No, I didn't. So I was like, fuck you guys. Watch this. Well, it was my boss on a...
So this is why I like having you on the channel. Very easy to manipulate with the psychological war aspect of the game.
I'm fine with it. I have emotional problems. Give me a break. Well, it's I do have... There's a little part of my brain which is like, well, you painted that fucking thing. Get it in there. Do you know what I mean? It's big. That's a big Hydra. Get it in there.
Also is part of playing the game, Dave.
Yeah. I know.
You're still using your model. If you put out that charge with a big unit, it's like what we were saying with the Chaos Knights before. the value of a unit isn't just in its hitting potential, it's what value of a target is it for your enemy? How much are they going to respond to that unit? And can you use a weaker unit to capitalize if that bigger unit is, do you know, like someone pulls their unit out of position by responding to my Chaos Knights? That's when the Marauders can sneak in on the side and actually do some damage. On a frontal attack, the Marauders are just going to give away combat res to the enemy. Whereas if they respond to that big scary unit, your Hydra in this example, my Knights in the other one, that can then give value to the other units in the army. And it's still, by running away, you still preserve that unit. Although it maybe takes too long to get back into the game, if it's later turns, it still provides it's earning its points back, providing value to other units.
Yeah, because most of the time I'm playing Dark Elves, and I remember I was at an event the other week where I was watching people charging Dark Riders into people. I was just like, "Wait, don't do that. They are not going to do well." And but anytime I play with them and they just run away and make somebody, do a false charge, and then in charging range would be Cold Ones or a Dragon or a Hydra or something. That weirdly the MVPs of the game, even though they don't do anything, they might get into they might have curled round and like flank or reared somebody, and then of course that's great, and I'll give that a go. But it's the running away with them and pulling them forward, especially with stuff like your army, which is kind of like if it's all
in your face.
If it's all in your face, and you get them to do a false charge or something, and they actually get a ranked up unit into them. That's the tactic you should go for if I don't get all excitable.
How hitty are your nobles in Dark Elves?
Hitty? Dark Elves can do some damage. If we don't kill you after that first round of combat, we're in trouble. Because we're not very heavy armoured, and the toughness is... We've got elven toughness of 3. You're not going to do very well, especially against Chaos. So it's more... You've got to do damage that first time round, so you can give them... People will probably think I'm full of shit, but I'm not a huge fan of a lot of Dark Elf items, like fighting items, and the ones that are good, like that ridiculous Power Fist one and all that. But that's too expensive to give to a noble. Like only a lord can have it, I think. Yeah. If you put a noble in, give him something good, like...
Can you give them all lances?
What?
Can you give them all lances?
Yeah, cold one. You cold one.
Oh, not on a cold one. Could you just put a... So this is maybe what you could take, the learning segment of the podcast, Dave. Maybe you could try to enhance the value of those Dark Riders that in the same way as I use my Marauder Horseman with an aspiring champion in. An aspiring champions are very good, right? So it might not work as well.
Yeah.
But it's maybe worth trying in a couple of the games. Is a noble with a lance, which will give him +2 strength on the charge. In a unit of Dark Riders, he'll gain the fast cavalry benefits from the Dark Riders. So therefore be able to put himself in a good position.
Yeah. I mean, I've never tried it.
And he might be able to hit a unit in the side or rear. And as fast cav, you negate rank bonus, unlike skirmishers, which means if you can kill enough on that side, which usually only has like 4 people on the side. So if you can kill 4 models and they can't challenge you out, you're always striking against the unit because characters won't be in the fighting rank if you charge into the side. So if you can kill 4 models, your Dark Riders won't take any damage in return, really.
Is there any rules? Because I think Dark Riders have spears, not lances.
So that's +1 strength. So you'd be strength 4.
So I'm not sure if... Can I put in a noble with a... Do you know what I mean? Can you have...
Yeah, you can mix weapons from a champion into a unit.
So he could have a lance, but the riders can't.
Yeah.
I'd give it a go, but it'd feel very strange sending them into combat. I think usually if Dark Elves are in combat, something has gone wrong. I gotta look at it because I've got a dragon that should get some smashing done in, and a Hydra and whatever. Even executioners, if they don't kill the first round, they're usually dead afterwards.
Yeah, but this is it. It's if you kill with the Dark Riders on the charge, you negate rank bonus. If you could have a standard in there, you get instant combat res of standard, one for the rank, or for the flank, sorry. And then whatever you've killed, if you kill 4, that's an immediate 6 combat res to their 1. So if you have 6 Dark Riders and your champion, and I'm not saying you just immediately go for that charge, in the same way as my army has to bait out stuff and wait for that moment, a glass cannon army like Dark Elves might benefit from something like that. Because in where I've got magic to sort of force people to be proactive. So this is like sort of part maybe that I missed before, is the magic forces people to be proactive in what they're doing. If they just sit there, I can usually out magic them. So that forces them to have to go on the offensive, even though I'm faster than them.
Yeah.
If with you having sorcerers, having repeater crossbows on your Dark Riders, and shooting across the rest of the army, that could force them to be proactive, which you can then capitalize on if it presents itself. And if it doesn't present itself, well, you just keep repeater crossbowing them down.
Well, it'll be interesting. I'll have to see if anybody comments or anything like that. And if anybody's go on in.
Here's one, Dave. How many games have you watched? How many games have you won by not doing that tactic?
By not running away. Do you mean?
Right. So, with you, what's your win percentage? Do you reckon?
With moment? Dark Elves?
Yeah.
My FIM is a difficult. With Dark Elves is probably 50-50. It's probably 50-50.
So if you lose a game and then go back to the normal strategy, you've not really upset your record, have you? You're not on 100%.
No, they're very. Well, I'm very inconsistent. I don't know. I think my problem with Dark Elves, and a lot of people are going to go, "Oh, he's just moaning about this," because you rely on dice too much, which I know that we all do. But if you're playing, your Tzeentch you're playing, you got your chosen knights. You can. It's when I've heard, because I've moved more onto my Fimir now, which are more. But do you know when you hear people go, "Yeah, I'll go through that unit, I'll destroy them, I'll move on to this one."
Because you can rely on things.
I was like, how the hell can you, as a Dark Elf player, I'm like, how the hell can you know that? So because I think it's because you're shooting so much, where my 50-50 usually comes in, I can wipe out most of an army in a couple of turns with my shooting if I roll well. So if I don't, it's like, oh shit, they're on me. And then Dark Elves are in trouble. So it's usually in those first 2 rounds of shooting and magic, like doom bolt the shit out of everything.
Yeah, so it's Dark Elves weren't the best army in 6th, right? So
you fucking kidding? Oh, you kidding? Yeah, that's kind of honestly. I was doing why I chose them. Apart from it was the army I wanted when I was a kid. When I started playing in like 5th, I just liked those. But there's an aspect of me just going, oh, if I win with them, I'll look really genius. Cool. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
If you are having mixed success with your current strategy, there's no reason to move away from the army fully. Just try something different that might result.
I think
that's what I'm saying.
There's a flip side to that where the problem is I often change my tactics every game as well. I think there's an argument for maybe trying to consistently do one thing. That might be an option, or have a consistent army list, which I really don't, because I'm usually I don't know. I bring units just because they look fancy. Do you know what I mean? I don't give a fuck if they. I say that because I've never really used Witch Elves much, and I used them recently just because I was like, oh, I never used them, and they actually did really well. So, so it's always I go to an event, 5 games, win 2, lose 3. That's maybe a third one. That's usually kind of.
No, but that's a fairly I did terribly with Alex's Dogs of War when I went to Resurrection and played with Alex's Dogs of War.
I think if I get one win, I'm kind of fine for the weekend. Do you know what I mean? I got me one. The rest of it, I can try some stuff out. I could test them. You know what I mean? I could try different tactics. If I'm fucking 3 games and I still haven't won one, I do get a bit desperate and charge in. I've got to mix stuff up and I don't stick to any tactics. Yeah, that's
well, so you say at the moment you need to really nail down your tactics. You just have to just go wild.
Yeah. I like the tactic of throw some shit against the wall and see what sticks.
There does come that moment though, Dave, where you've got to see what sticks rather than just keep throwing shit.
And then I forget what actually worked, like 24 hours later, as soon as I got home, all excited that I won a couple. But yeah, so... But so, is there anything about like the lore of Tzeentch that you like? Anything about the actual storytelling or anything? I do like to ask that as well, if there's something that...
Right,
is there anything like that which made you choose the army, or was it literally just the way it played?
No, it was...
I know the Kislev and the...
Yeah,
was there anything in the books?
I really liked the Riders of the Dead or not series, the Riders of the Dead novel. How the Tzeentch magicians are portrayed in Beast Slayer, the Gottfried Felix novel.
The two twins, isn't it? The two, they're like twins.
Yeah, and also the actual main character or the main bad guy is a Tzeentch lord that is being manipulated by the twins.
He was, wasn't he? Yeah.
These bits.
How far you got? I'm up to halfway through Vampire Slayer.
I've done them all up to the point where they go to being Age of Sigmar.
Don't spoil it for me. But I literally got to Vampire. As soon as they got all that nonsense, I'm done. But I think I'm assuming those twins come back because they don't. Because
you just said no spoilers, but you're asking me.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, they did. I suppose it's a spoiler saying that they didn't die, but okay, all right, fine.
There we go. There's a dead end.
Yay! That's what this podcast should be called. The dead end.
There we go. He's just
all
organic. So,
yeah. So sorry, there's those guys.
We've got the Chaos Champions in Beast Slayer, and also it's just tidbits of lore like this. A lot of Tzeentch plays a fairly heavy role in Cathay lore. So when you get characters visiting the Empire from Cathay, there's a couple of them that are Tzeentch based because they've fallen to Tzeentch, which surely is the influence of chaos coming down from beyond the wall.
Is that Beast in Velvet? Beast in
Velvet, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fucking great film.
So, book, Dave, book.
Yeah, sorry.
So I really liked that bit of lore. So I was just taking that otherworldly influence. I know that goes to all of the chaos powers, but the one that could most exist to everyone, I would think, or in my own mind, is Tzeentch, because it's anyone that has a plan to do anything better. Slaanesh maybe as well, because it's anyone that wants to be better at anything. Like if you're a violinist, you want to be a better violinist, you might fall to Slaanesh. But to a reasonable person that's got a reasonable society set up. So
I think
anyone with a reasonable society,
yeah,
the barbarian societies, when we put that in an analog of like real world, Tzeentch could possibly happen in that you're just praying for your mechanisms to come true.
Well, I always quite liked I always thought Tzeentch should be the one where the most good intentions would have been in it to join, like the search for knowledge. Like a scientist might look into Tzeentch to get knowledge, where you might get a load of perverts going down Slaanesh way, or you might just get angry twats who want to fight going, people who needed a wash going Nurgle. But Tzeentch, you kind of like, it's the one where, all right, we'll do an experiment, but we'll control it. Don't worry, we're powerful.
Yeah, we can definitely control this.
I think that's
just add a bit more warpstone.
I quite like that. There's I don't know if you ever read the books, well, it's a collection of the Tales of the Old World. It's not what I've copied the podcast name of at all, but there's a book of just short stories, which is Tales of the Old World, and I think it's the very last story, which is, I thought was brilliant. It's a short story where there was a guy, without giving too much away, there's a guy who basically is doing like a seance thing.
Are you trying to avoid spoilers on a 25-year-old book?
Yeah. So but you haven't read it, so no, ruining it for you and the 9 other people listening. So he like does some kind of seance thing, and he kind of summons a Tzeentch disc, because his disc is like a demon, isn't it, itself? And he gets on it, and it takes him all across the Empire, and he flies, but he goes into the Chaos Waste, and he goes into the realm of chaos on it. That is really good. I'd recommend that. I could actually, next time I see you, I'll bring you the book, actually.
Right.
And it's the last, I think it's by William King as well, out of all of them.
Oh, right, okay.
Who did Gotrek and Felix. It's I thought it was really interesting. He goes in and the different realms of Tzeentch and the way he's talking, and he actually, and he comes face to face with Tzeentch himself. And it's kind of like, I'll send you that. I thought that was really, it's weird. I think I like, like everything which isn't just straightforward anymore.
Yeah.
When I get into my old age, it's the weirder it is, the more kind of interesting. Because it makes you think about it afterwards. If something's weird and it makes you think, and you're kind of like, I remember reading, there's a bunch of cool short stories on there which is just about a battle or a vampire turned up or so. But that one was that, and I thought that was weird.
And then a vampire.
There was a vampire, and there was another one, and then an orc turned out, and then Sigmar, and then brilliant, and then. But I recommend that. That's worth a read if you want to see any other
definitely.
Tzeentch ones. I can't think of any other Tzeentch, but otherwise, thanks very much. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your channel anyway, about Bearfoot Miniatures? And just let the guys know.
Do a shameless plug.
Tell them to click
on
like and subscribe and all that.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, I have been Max from Bearfoot Miniatures, and I have basically a YouTube channel where I play a few different games. It's a lot of Heresy, Necromunda, and also Warhammer Fantasy, Battlefleet Gothic, things like that. I really love Warhammer Fantasy. It's quite hard getting games in of fantasy with varied armies and things like that. But if anyone wants to come on and play a fantasy game, hit me up. I'm well up for having anyone that's passionate about fantasy on the channel. That's Bearfoot Miniatures with a bear at the front.
Bears in bed. But no, it is. Yeah, to be fair, there's lots of 40k and 30k content, but that is what gets. It's ridiculous the views you can get off 40k compared to fantasy as well, can it? So that's why we need more fantasy. Give Max a bell so I can see. I'd like to see
you
somebody
can get on the channel more, so you can shamelessly plug your podcast.
Yeah. And plus, I'd like to see somebody hammer him for once because he seems to do very, very
well.
But
if you want to see hammered, there is in fact a battle report where I get absolutely hammered by an unexpected army. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not going to spoil which one for anyone that's not seen it, but if someone wants to see,
it might be me. Why couldn't it be me? It might be me if you're.
You've sort of given it away by saying you'd finally want to see me get hammered, implying that you've not. But
I might do well. I might have given up. I might have walked off like a child and called it a draw. You never know. Give it a watch anyway.
Well, that's it. It's worth noting that even though I've been discussing the tournament style list that you could potentially do, or the broken builds you can do with Tzeentch in fairly outlined ways, it's not a tournament channel. Don't be expecting a tournament channel. I don't want to make that sort of content. And I don't think we're all playing in the B leagues now, right? Fantasy's been dead for 25 years in the edition we've been playing. So it's not that sort of channel. I'm not aiming for it. If you want to see a tournament game, go elsewhere, because we're playing for the fun and so that you guys can have fun watching it rather than a tournament game.
It's usually play people you know, don't you? So they're usually having a laugh with them.
Which I will play anyone. It's just easier to get people that I know because I can force them into it.
Well, I like playing because it's a laugh when we do it, but the problem is that you're filming it, so there's evidence in the world of how fucking terribly I did. but I might be lying. Spoiler alert! I might do well just to make you get some viewings in. But anyway, but yeah, no, it's Bearfoot Miniatures. Look out for it and subscribe if you can.
Yep.
Lastly, are you looking forward to War of the Everchosen? You're going to that, aren't you?
Well, I've got to prove that Beiji reigns supreme, and obviously in the fluff in my head, he wins everything all the time when he's having the Beiji days. So let's just hope it's a Beiji day when I turn up to War of the Everchosen. Because obviously, I need to prove that he is the best in the world. I don't particularly like the fact that he could be Everchosen of the other gods, but maybe I'll prove that Tzeentch reigns supreme at War of the Everchosen.
He might be, unless he's the average chosen for the day or something like that. So you never know.
The never chosen.
Yeah, but yeah, if you pop along to that, you're bound to meet Max, and that'll be a good laugh too. So yeah. So anyway, look out for Bearfoot Miniatures. And cheers for your time, Max, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers for having us on, Dave.
No problem, mate. Take care. Bye.
See you in a bit.
Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you got lots of advice and hopefully a half smile here and there for the chat. Look out next week. I'm going to talk to Tom Carley about how to play and how to be Strigoi vampire count armies. He's a real expert on them, so there's really lots of information on that. And I actually had a game with him before that one, because that was actually face to face, that podcast, which was really great. So we go over loads, so it was good to go get beat by him and then go over why it happened. But anyway, so we'll see you then. But remember to go to talesfromtheoldworld.com to check out War of the Everchosen, just to find out, the unique rule scenarios, where it is and all that. But take it easy, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Tales from the Old World, a Warhammer Fantasy podcast, sponsored by War of the Everchosen, a 6th edition fantasy event with some of the most fun and unique scenarios in the hobby. Go to talesfromtheoldworld.com to get your tickets today to claim the title of Everchosen.